Welcome back. If you or somebody you know has ever worked in food service, you know that it involves a lot of long, unusual, and sometimes unexpected shifts. But some food service employees are calling foul and are demanding restrictions on surprise scheduling changes. Jim, is this something the government should be getting involved in?
Absolutely not. There's no reason to get involved in. Let me produce a news flash. There are a lot of businesses that involve unexpected shift changes. If you are in the hospital and if you're a hospital worker and you have an influx of people in the emergency room or whatever the case may be, I know for a fact that they can require you to work over. If you are in a technical company and you have a major outage at a customer, you will be expected to work over to get that customer whatever he needs. That's business, okay? We've got to stop trying to enforce all of these ridiculous regulations on businesses. You can't do it. And I say that not as a Republican, but as a businessman. Stop making me jump through the hoops. If you want me to be productive, and I'm all for the 40-hour work week. I'm all for overtime pay. I am for the concept that I know that there was a big discussion about the point at which you could be declared a managerial or an exempt employee was like $24,000, and they moved it to $40,000. I agree with that. I think people were gaming that. But if you got to work and they want the job, they got to do what they got to do. Yeah. And I think that most employers will be cognizant if an employee, if somebody is leaving on vacation, I don't think most employers, unless it's a super duper emergency, are going to ask their employees to stay through that shift. But on the nights where you can do it, I think
I'm gonna disagree with you here to an extent. People are comparing this, these protections against surprise scheduling to a $15 minimum wage, and I'm against the $15 minimum wage as anyone. But this is about a certain level of decency, and when you have employees who are making minimum wage, these aren't people like tech employees who are paid very large sums of money, or doctors to be on call at any point to take care of problems. These are people making $8, $9, maybe $10 an hour if they're lucky. Some places they're only making $7.25, especially in fast food. So you have to be able to afford these people a certain amount of decency. And where I think this is really important is if you schedule someone for a certain amount of hours during a week, and then you take away their shifts just because business is slow. That's money that person is counting on because you told them you can come in here and you can work during this time. I think that's something that needs to be curtailed. Now, the New York law that we're talking about requires employers to inform employees 2 weeks out of when they'll be working, and I disagree with that, but I think there needs to be a certain amount of common human decency here, and I don't like the government to get involved in much, but if it's getting to the point where, and I don't think it really does, like this is one of the laws where I think it's trying to solve a problem that isn't necessarily there, or a problem that's not necessarily prominent. But if we do have situations where you're scheduling someone for 35 hours in a week and then you're only, letting them come in and work 27, that's money that they're losing out on, that they're counting on to be able to pay their bills.
So if you are a full-time employee, then in my mind you have an expectation of somewhere between 35 and 40 hours a week, or you are not defined as a full-time employee.
Maryland requirement's 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you are a part-time employee, then you are guaranteed nothing.
Right.
And in my mind, so let's tie this into the minimum wage for a second here. What happens, in your view, if we raise the minimum wage? What happens to the prices to consumers?
If you raise the minimum wage, the businesses would have to pay their employees more. It would be a higher expense, and then prices would go up on consumers.
If I pay someone to show up at work and do nothing, if he is unproductive, am I not, in fact, increasing the cost to the employer and eventually, probably not so eventually, probably now, going to increase the cost to the consumer because I am paying employees to do nothing?
That's correct, but here's the difference. When you have the government coercing people to pay people a certain amount that is above the market price for their labor, then that's an issue. That's the government that's causing this hardship on the business. If you schedule someone to work a certain amount of hours, and then it's just inconvenient for you and your business to pay them that money for that time that you told them they would work, that's your fault. That's not the government's fault. And there needs to be a certain amount of good faith in the agreements and contracts between employees and employers, where you are, these employees are relying on you to make their living. So you need to make sure that you're providing that living for them if you tell them they can work.
I really wish that it was that black and white.
I wish
really
it
do.
was too, but it's not.
I know. It's unfortunately it's not. So I used to work at a grocery store. Okay, so I know very well how a lot of the scheduling stuff works. Basically, your number of hours so you can work employees is set based upon what your store revenue is. Now, you can predict what your store revenue is, all right, but there's problems with that. Let me give you a great example. All right, when I was working grocery store, we had a real bad blizzard come in one time. It shut down the roads for, I would say, probably about 3 days. Well, they closed the store because nobody was coming to the store for 2 of those days. So they had to tell the employees, I'm sorry, you can't come to work today. Now,
Was that over safety concerns, or was it
no,
over
that wasn't
the
over
business?
safety concerns. The roads to the store itself, between the employees and the store, most of them were open. But because the weather was so terrible, people weren't going in.
Well, and the fact that people fill up
So-
on groceries the day before
Right.
the storm.
People had already filled up all their groceries.
Right.
All right. So they had to cut the employees' hours and basically close the store down. Now, you cannot pay people to come in and not do anything when there's no customers in the store.
or you'll be out of business.
Or you'll be out of business.
And nobody will
Well,
have a
it's
job.
your fault that you scheduled them and told them that they would be able to come in if you fail to predict that. Now, obviously, the storm is an extreme circumstance, but we're talking about when it's just not as busy as the employer might have expected.
But it's the same. It is the exact same, whether it's a storm that causes it or just something random that, hey, people just aren't showing up today.
Employers need
That's
to be
the
able to
problem.
operate in good faith with their employees.
Well, they should be able to, but I think there are degrees of this. I think if this happens once every couple of months, I think then the employer is completely justified in doing what's going on. If they make these scheduling mistakes every week and just don't know how to schedule, well, then that's a different thing.
Right.
And the employee has relief.
How do you differentiate legally between the two?
You don't.
You don't.
There is no legal differentiation.
The wonderful thing about the free market is that if the employee doesn't like how they're being treated,
They
where
can
they're
leave.
working, they can leave and go work somewhere else.
And can we agree, based on a free market economy, which I think everybody at this table agrees with, that with full employment, if we have an unemployment rate down in the 4%, so it's really not about an unemployment issue, we're not going to have those issues, because guess what? When the supply and demand, when the demand is high and the supply is low, one of the perks that the employee says is, hey, we're not going to call you in and then send you home because we're not busy.
Do you know why Henry Ford paid his people so well? He was never forced. He was never forced to treat the people like he did. He treated his employees like he did because he wanted good employees. That is the way the free market works when it comes to business. If a business wants to have the best talent, then the business needs to treat their employees good. If they don't treat their employees good, they'll still have employees, but it's going to be people that are going to be put in minimum effort.
Yep.
So up next, on the flip side, a U.S. appeals court upholds non-disclosure rules for surveillance orders. Stay tuned.